consciousness through the eye is burning. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 207 overall, Tipiṭaka, part 133. And this is part 4 of Mahāvagga. If you would like to start, that's the Great Division. So this is after the rules. We've started to talk about the beginning of Lord Buddha's ministry and his original students and that kind of thing. If you'd like to start at the beginning of that, the beginning of Mahāvagga, you can click here. If, however, you would like to start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka and hear 190 episodes of rules for monks and nuns before the Mahāvagga, then feel free to click here to start the beginning of the Tipiṭaka playlist. Hope everyone's doing well. I will go ahead and get to the reading, picking up where we left off last time. Then the Lord, having kept the reins, addressed the monks, saying, quote, "Monks, by proper attention, by proper right effort, was supreme freedom attained by me, supreme freedom realized. You too, monks, by proper attention, by proper right effort, may attain supreme freedom, may realize supreme freedom." End quote. Then Mara, the evil one, approached the Lord. Having approached, he addressed the Lord with verses, quote, "Bound art thou by Mara's snares, both those of devas and of men. In great bondage art thou bound, recluse. Thou wilt not be freed from me." End quote. Quote, this is Lord Buddha replying, presumably, "Freed am I from Mara's snares, both those of devas and of men. From great bondage am I freed. Humbled art thou, O end maker." End quote. Then Mara, the evil one, thinking, quote, "The Lord knows me, the welfarer knows me," end quote, pained, afflicted, vanished then and there. Then the Lord, having stayed at Benares for as long as he found suiting, set out on tour for Uruvela. Then the Lord, turning off from the road, approached a certain woodland grove. Having plunged into that woodland grove, he sat down at the root of a certain tree. At that time, a group of as many as 30 friends of high standing, with their wives, were amusing themselves in that same woodland grove. One had no wife, (so, end parentheses), a woman of low standing was brought along for him. Then, while they were heedlessly amusing themselves, that woman of low standing, taking (their) belongings, ran away. Then these friends, doing their friend a service and seeking for that woman, roaming about that woodland grove, saw the Lord sitting at the root of a certain tree. Seeing him, they approached the Lord. Having approached, they spoke thus to the Lord, quote, "Lord, Has the Lord not seen a woman? End quote. Quote, but what have you, young men, to do with a woman? End quote. Quote, we, Lord, a group of as many as 30 friends of high standing, with our wives, were amusing ourselves in this woodland grove. One had no wife, parentheses, so, end parentheses, a woman of low standing was brought along for him. Then, Lord, as we were heedlessly amusing ourselves, that woman of low standing, taking our belongings, ran away. Consequently, Lord, we friends, doing our friend a service and seeking for that woman, are roaming about this woodland grove. End quote. Quote, what do you think of this, young men? Which is better for you, that you should seek for a woman or that you should seek for the self? End quote. Quote, truly this were better for us, Lord, that we should seek for the self. End quote. Quote, well then, young men, you sit down. I will teach you Dhamma. End quote. Saying, quote, yes, Lord, end quote, this group of friends of high standing, having greeted the Lord, sat down at a respectful distance. The Lord talked a progressive talk to these, that is to say, talk on giving, talk on moral habit, talk on heaven, that, quote, whatever is of nature to apprise, all that is of the nature to stop. End quote. These, having seen Dhamma, attained Dhamma, known Dhamma, plunged into Dhamma, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, may we, Lord, receive the going forth in the Lord's presence. May we receive ordination. End quote. Quote, come, monks, end quote. The Lord said, quote, well taught is Dhamma, fair the Brahma faring for making an utter end of ill, end quote. So this came to be these venerable ones' ordination. Told is the case of the group of friends of high standing. The second portion for repeating. Then the Lord, walking on tour, in due course arrived at Uruvela. Now at that time, these matted hair ascetics, Kassapa of Uraveda, Kassapa of the river, Kassapa of Gaya, this might be Kasyapa, it's just spelled like Kassapa, anyway, were living at Uruvela. Of these, the matted hair ascetic Kassapa of Uruvela was leader, guide, highest, chief, head of 500 matted hair ascetics. The matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of the river was leader, head of these 300 matted hair ascetics. The matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Gaya was their leader, head of 200 matted hair ascetics. Then the Lord approached the hermitage of the matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Uruvela. Having approached, I think I said Uruveda before, but it's Uruvela. Having approached, he spoke thus to the matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Uruvela. Quote, if it is not inconvenient to you, Kasyapa, let me stay for one night in the fire room. End quote. I can't help wondering if this is going to end up being Mahakasyapa, one of the 10 principal disciples. Let's find out. Quote, it is not inconvenient to me, great recluse, parentheses, but, end parentheses, there is a fierce serpent king of psychic power there. He is a terribly venomous snake. Do not let him harm you. End quote. And a second time the Lord spoke thus to the matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Uruvela. Quote, if it is not inconvenient to you, End quote. And a third time the Lord spoke to the matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Uruvela, quote, "If it is not inconvenient to you, Kasyapa, let me stay for one night in the fire room." End quote. Quote, "It is not inconvenient to me, great recluse, parentheses, but, end parentheses, there is a fierce serpent king of psychic power there. He is a terribly venomous snake. Do not let him harm you." End quote. It seems like in 6th century before Common Era, conversations went a lot differently than they do today. Well, quote, it is not likely that he can harm me. Please do you, Kasyapa, allow, parentheses, me the use of, end parentheses, the fire room. End quote. Quote, "Stay, great recluse, as you wish it." End quote. Then the Lord, having entered the fire room, having laid down a grass mat, sat down cross-legged, keeping his back erect, having caused mindfulness to be present in front of him. Then that serpent saw that the Lord had entered, and seeing this, pained, afflicted, he blew forth smoke. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, "What now if I, without destroying this serpent's skin and hide and flesh and ligaments and bones and the marrow of his bones, were to master, parentheses, his, end parentheses, heat by heat," end quote. Then the Lord, having worked a prayer of psychic power, blew forth smoke. Then that serpent, not conquering anger, blazed up. The Lord, having attained the condition of heat, also blazed up. The Lord, having attained the condition of heat, also blazed up. That's why, I read that twice, sorry. When both were in flames, the fire room became as though burning, ablaze, in flames. Then the matted hair ascetics, having surrounded the fire room, spoke thus, quote, "Beautiful indeed is the great recluse, parentheses, but, end parentheses, he will be harmed by the serpent," end quote. Then the Lord, at the end of that night, without having destroyed that serpent's skin and hide and flesh and ligaments and bones and the marrow of the bones, having mastered, parentheses, his, end parentheses, heat by heat, having placed him in his bowl, showing him to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, saying, quote, "This Kasyapa is your serpent. His heat was mastered by heat," end quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, "Truly, the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great majesty, in that he can master by heat the heat of the fierce serpent king, who has psychic power and is a terribly venomous snake. But yet he is not a perfected one, as I am." End quote. Okay, Uruvela is calling himself a perfected one, saying Lord Buddha's not a perfected one. Let's see where this goes. Near the Niranjara, the Lord spoke thus to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, "If it is not inconvenient to you, Kasyapa, let me stay this day, parentheses only, end parentheses, in the fire hall." End quote. Quote, "It is not inconvenient to me, great recluse, parentheses, but, end parentheses, as I am anxious for your comfort, I warn you that there is a fierce serpent king there, of psychic power, a terribly venomous snake. Do not let him harm you." End quote. Quote, "It is not likely that he can harm me. Please do you, Kasyapa, allow, parentheses, me the use of, end parentheses, the fire room." End quote. Quote, "It is given." End quote. Having understood this, the fearless one entered, fear overpassed. Having seen that the holy man had entered, the chief of snakes, afflicted, blew forth smoke. The chief of men, joyful, unperturbed, blew forth smoke there too. But the chief of snakes, not conquering anger, blazed up like a fire. The chief of men, highly proficient in the condition of heat, blazed up there too. When both were in flames, the matted hair ascetics, as they were looking at the fire room, said, quote, beautiful indeed is the great recluse, parentheses, but, and parentheses, he will be harmed by the serpent. End quote. Then at the end of that night, the serpent's flames became extinguished, but the multicolored flames of him of psychic power remained, and multicolored flames, dark green, then red, crimson, yellow, and crystal-colored, were on Angirasa's body. Having put the chief of snakes into his bowl, he showed him to the Brahmin, saying, quote, this, Kasyapa, is your serpent. His heat was mastered by my heat. Then the matted hair ascetic, Uruvela Kasyapa, thoroughly believing in this wonder of psychic power of the Lord, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, stay here, great recluse. I, parentheses, can offer you, end parentheses, a constant supply of food. End quote. The first wonder. I think that means what we just read was the first wonder. Okay, continuing. Then the Lord stayed in a certain woodland grove near the hermitage of the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa. Then the four great kings, having illumined the entire woodland grove on a glorious night with glorious color, approached the Lord. Having greeted the Lord, they stood at the four quarters like huge fires. Then the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa approached the Lord at the end of that night, and having approached, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, it is time, great recluse. The meal is ready. But now who were these, great recluse, who, having illumined the entire woodland grove during the glorious night with glorious color, approached you, and having approached, greeted you, stood at the four quarters like huge fires? Okay. Quote, Kasyapa, these were the four great kings who approached me in order to hear Dhamma. End quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, truly, the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, in that the four great kings also approach him in order to hear Dhamma, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. End quote. Then the Lord, having eaten the meal, parentheses, offered by, end parentheses, the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, stayed in that same woodland grove. The second wonder. Then Sakka, I want to say Sakya, it just says S-A-K-K-A. Anyway, then Sakya, lord of the Devas, having illumined the entire woodland grove on a glorious night with glorious color, approached the Lord. Having greeted the Lord, he stood at a respectful distance, like a huge fire, more glorious and more superb than the four splendors of color. Then the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa approached the Lord at the end of that night. 3 dots, parentheses, it's all the same as the previous, Miss Horner at the Pali Tech Society doesn't like translating things that are the same as things that were written before at any point in the previous 3 books. So There you have it. End parentheses, 3 dots, stayed in that same woodland grove. The third wonder. Okay. The Brahma Sahampati, 3 dots, parentheses, it's the same. It's all the same. And parentheses, 3 dots, stayed in that same woodland grove. The fourth wonder. Okay. And now at that time, a great sacrifice, parentheses, made by, end parentheses, the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa was going forward. And the entire, parentheses, population of, end parentheses, Anga and Magadha, taking abundant solid food and soft food, wanted to go, parentheses, to it, end parentheses. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, at present my great sacrifice is going forward, and the entire, parentheses, population of, end parentheses, Anga and Magadha, taking abundant solid food and soft food, will come. If the great recluse does a wonder of psychic power before the populace, the great recluse's gains and honor will much increase. My gains and honor will decline. Now the great recluse shall certainly not come tomorrow. Then the Lord, knowing by mind the reasoning in the mind of the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, having gone to Kuru, having fetched alms food from there, having eaten it by the Anotata lake, took his midday rest there. Then at the end of that night, the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa approached the Lord. Having approached, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, it is time, great recluse, the meal is ready. But why did you not come yesterday, great recluse? We thought of you, however, saying, quote, then quotes, how is it that the great recluse does not come? And quote, then quotes, a portion of solid food and soft food was put aside for you, end quote. Quote, now did it not occur to you, Kasyapa, quote, then quotes, at present my great sacrifice is going forward, 4 dots. Now the great recluse shall certainly not come tomorrow. And quote within quotes, so I, Kasyapa, knowing by mind the reasoning in your mind, having gone to Kuru, having fetched alms food there, having eaten it by the Anotata lake, took my midday rest there, end quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, truly, the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, in that he also knows mind by mind, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. End quote. Then the Lord, having eaten the meal, parentheses, offered by, end parentheses, the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, stayed in that same woodland grove, the fifth wonder. Now at that time a rag robe accrued to the Lord. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, now where can I wash the rag robe, end quote. Then Sakya, Lord of the Devas, knowing by mind the reasoning in the Lord's mind, having dug a tank with his hand, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, Lord, the Lord may wash the rag robe here, end quote. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, now on what can I need the rag robe, K-N-E-A-D, not N-E-E-D, end quote. Then Sakya, Lord of the Devas, knowing by mind the reasoning in the Lord's mind, having put down a large stone near him, said, quote, Lord, the Lord may need the rag robe here, end quote. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, now holding on to what can I come up from, parentheses, the water, end parentheses, end quote. Then a Devata, inhabiting a kakuda, parentheses, tree, end parentheses, knowing by mind the reasoning in the Lord's mind, bent down a bough, saying, quote, Lord, the Lord may come up from, parentheses, the water, end parentheses, holding on here, end quote. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, now on what can I stretch out the rag robe, end quote. Then Sakya, Lord of the Devas, knowing by mind the reasoning in the Lord's mind, having put down a large stone near him, said, quote, Lord, the Lord may stretch out the rag robe here, end quote. Then the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa approached the Lord at the end of that night. Having approached, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, it is time, great recluse, the meal is ready. But how is it, great recluse, that this tank was not here before, and now this tank is here, nor was this stone put down before? By whom was this stone put down? Nor was a bough of this kakuda, parentheses, tree, end parentheses, bent down before, and now this bough is bent down, end quote. Quote, Kasyapa, a rag robe accrued to me here, and this occurred to me, Kasyapa, quote within quotes, now where can I wash the rag robe? And quote within quotes, then Kasyapa, Sakya, Lord of the Devas, knowing by mind the reasoning in my mind, having dug a tank with his hand, spoke thus to me, quote within quotes, Lord, the Lord may wash the rag robe here, end quote within quotes. So this tank was dug by the hand of a non-human being. Then this occurred to me, Kasyapa, quote within quotes, now on what can I need the rag robe? And quote within quotes, 3 dots. So this stone was put by a non-human being. Then this occurred to me, Kasyapa, quote within quotes, now holding on to what can I come up out of, parentheses, the water, end parentheses. And quote within quotes, then Kasyapa a Devata, 3 dots, said, quote within quotes, Lord, the Lord may come up from, parentheses, the water, end parentheses, holding on here. So this kaduka, parentheses, tree, end parentheses, was a hold for my hand. Then this occurred to me, Kasyapa, quote within quotes, now on what can I stretch out the rag robe, end quote within quotes. Then Sakya, Lord of the Devas, 3 dots. So this stone was put by a non-human being, end quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, truly, the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, in that Sakya, the Lord of the Devas, does him a service, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am, end quote. Then the Lord, having eaten the meal, parentheses, offered by, end parentheses, the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, stayed in that same woodland grove. Then the matted hair ascetic Uruvela approached the Lord at the end of that night. Having approached, he announced the time to the Lord, saying, quote, it is time, great recluse, the meal is ready, end quote. Quote, you go along, Kasyapa, I am coming along, end quote. And having dismissed the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, having plucked a fruit from a rose apple tree, after which this land of the rose apples is named, he sat down in the fire room, having arrived first. The matted hair ascetic Uruvela saw the Lord sitting in the fire room. Seeing him, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, by what way have you come, great recluse? I set out before you, but you are sitting in the fire room, having arrived first. End quote. Quote, now I, Kasyapa, having dismissed you, having plucked a fruit from a rose apple tree, after which this land of rose apples is named, am sitting in the fire room, having arrived first. Truly, Kasyapa, this rose apple fruit is full of color, full of scent, full of flavor. If you like, do eat it. End quote. Quote, no, great recluse, you alone are worthy of it. You alone eat it. End quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic, Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, truly, the great recluse is of psychic power, of great might, in that having dismissed me first, he sat down in the fire room having arrived first. But yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. End quote. Then the Lord, having eaten the meal, offered by, the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, stayed in that same woodland grove. Then the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa approached the Lord at the end of the night. Having announced the time, he announced the time to the Lord, saying, quote, it is time, great recluse, your meal is ready. You go on, Kasyapa, I am coming along. End quote. And having dismissed the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, and having plucked a mango fruit not far from the rose apple tree, after which this land of rose apples is named, having plucked a fruit of emblic myrobalan, not far from the mango tree, having plucked a fruit of yellow myrobalan, not far from the emblic myrobalan, having gone to the 30, having plucked a flower from the coral tree, he sat down in the fire room, having arrived first. So I think in these cases, the 3 dots mean that entire story happened again, except this time with a mango fruit and this time with a myrobalan. All right. The matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa saw the Lord sitting in the fire room, and seeing him, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, by what way have you come, great recluse? I set out before you, but you are sitting in the fire room, having arrived first. End quote. Quote, now I, Kasyapa, having dismissed you, having gone to the 30, having plucked a flower from the coral tree, am sitting in the fire room, having arrived first. Truly, Kasyapa, this flower of the coral tree is full of color, full of scent. If you like, do take it. End quote. Quote, no, great recluse, you alone are worthy of it. You alone take it. End quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, truly, the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, in that having dismissed me first, having gone to the 30, having plucked a flower from the coral tree, he is sitting in the fire room, having arrived first, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. Now at that time, these matted hair ascetics, wanting to tend the sacred and fires, were unable to chop sticks. Then it occurred to these matted hair ascetics, quote, doubtless it is owing to the psychic might of the great recluse that we are unable to chop sticks. End quote. Then the Lord spoke thus to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, Kasyapa, let sticks be chopped. End quote. Quote, let them be chopped, great recluse. End quote. 500 sticks were chopped simultaneously. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela, quote, truly the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, in that also sticks are chopped, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. End quote. Now at that time, these matted hair ascetics, wanting to tend the sacred and fires, were unable to kindle the fires. Then it occurred to these matted hair ascetics, quote, doubtless, unable to kindle the fires, end quote. Then the Lord spoke thus to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, Kasyapa, let the fires be kindled, end quote. Quote, let them be kindled, great recluse, end quote. 500 fires were kindled simultaneously. Quote, in that also the fires are kindled, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am, end quote. Now at that time, these matted hair ascetics, having tended the fires, were unable to extinguish the fires. The 500 fires were extinguished simultaneously. Quote, in that also the fires are extinguished, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am, end quote. Now at that time, on the cold winter nights between the eights, in a time of snowfall, these matted hair ascetics were plunging into the river Naranjara, then emerging and repeatedly plunging in and out. Then the Lord created as many as 500 fire vessels, just where these matted hair ascetics, having come up from the river, warmed themselves. Then it occurred to these matted hair ascetics, quote, doubtless it is owing to, the psychic might of the great recluse that these fire vessels are created, end quote. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela, quote, truly the great recluse is of psychic power, of great might, in that he can create these fire vessels, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am, end quote. Now at that time a great rain fell out of the proper season, and a great flood resulted. The Lord was staying in a place which became inundated by water. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, now suppose that I, having made the water recede all around, should pace up and down in the middle on dust-covered ground, end quote. Then the Lord, having made the water recede all around, paced up and down in the middle on dust-covered ground. Then the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, thinking, quote, I hope that the great recluse has not been carried away by the water, end quote, went together with a boat and many matted hair ascetics to that place where the Lord was staying. The matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa saw the Lord, who, having made the water recede all round, was pacing up and down in the middle on dust-covered ground. And, seeing him, he spoke thus to the Lord, quote, is it indeed you who are here, great recluse? End quote. Quote, it is I, Kasyapa. End quote. And the Lord, having risen up above the ground, placed himself in the boat. Then it occurred to the matted hair ascetic Uruvela Kasyapa, quote, truly, the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, in that also the water does not carry him away, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. End quote. Then it occurred to the Lord, quote, now for a long time it will occur to this foolish man, quote, then quotes, truly the great recluse is of great psychic power, of great might, but yet he is not a perfected one, as I am. End quote, then quotes, now suppose I should deeply stir this matted hair ascetic, end quote. Then the Lord spoke thus to the matted hair ascetic of Uruvela, quote, neither are you, Kasyapa, a perfected one, nor have you entered on the way to perfection. And that course is not for you, by which you either could be a perfected one or could have entered on the way to perfection. End quote. Then the matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Uruvela, having inclined his head to the Lord's feet, spoke thus to the Lord, quote, Lord, may I receive the going forth in the Lord's presence. may I receive ordination. End quote. Quote, it is you, Kasyapa, who are leader, guide, highest, chief, head of 500 matted hair ascetics. Do consult these so that they can do what they think, parentheses, right, end parentheses, end quote. Then the matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Uruvela approached these matted hair ascetics. Having approached, he spoke thus to these matted hair ascetics, quote, I want, good sirs, to fare the Brahma faring under the great recluse. I think is what that says. There's like a part of the text missing here. I don't know. Let the revered sirs do what they think, parentheses, right, end parentheses, end quote. Quote, for a long time we, good sir, have been much pleased by the great recluse. If, reverend sir, you will fare the Brahma faring under the great recluse, all of us will fare the Brahma faring under the great recluse. End quote. Then these matted hair ascetics, having let their hair, their braids, their bundles on the carrying poles, their implements for fire worship be carried away, all mixed up in the water, approached the Lord. Having approached, having inclined their heads to the Lord's feet, they spoke thus to the Lord, quote, Lord, may we receive the going forth in the Lord's presence. May we receive ordination. Quote, come, monks, end quote, the Lord said, quote, well taught is Dhamma, fair. Well taught is Dhamma. Fair the Brahma faring for making an utter end of ill. End quote. So this came to be these venerable ones' ordination. The matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of the river saw the hair, the braids, the bundles on the carrying poles, the implements for fire worship being carried away, all mixed up in the water. Seeing this, it occurred to him, quote, I hope my brother is not in danger, end quote. And he dispatched matted hair ascetics, saying, quote, go and find out about my brother, end quote. And he himself with his 300 matted hair ascetics approached the venerable Kasyapa of Uruvela. Having approached, he spoke thus to the venerable Kasyapa of Uruvela, quote, is this better, Kasyapa? End quote. Quote, yes, friend, this is better, end quote. Then these matted hair ascetics, 3 dots. So this came to be these venerable ones' ordination. The matted hair ascetic Kasyapa of Gaya saw the hair, the braids, the bundles on carrying poles, the implements for fire worship being carried away, all mixed up in the water. Seeing this, it occurred to him, quote, I hope my brothers are not in danger, end quote. And he dispatched matted hair ascetics, saying, quote, go and find out about my brothers, end quote. And he himself, with his 200 matted hair ascetics, approached the venerable Kasyapa of Uruvela. Having approached, he spoke thus to the venerable Kasyapa of Uruvela, quote, is this better, Kasyapa? End quote. Quote, yes, friend, this is better, end quote. Then these matted hair ascetics, having let their hair, their braids, their bundles on carrying poles, their implements for fire worship be carried away, all mixed up in the water, approached the Lord. Having approached, having inclined their heads to the Lord's feet, they spoke thus to the Lord, quote, Lord, may we receive the going forth in the Lord's presence. May we receive ordination, end quote. Quote, come, monks, end quote. The Lord said, quote, well taught is Dhamma, fair the Brahma faring for making an utter end of ill, end quote. So this came to be these venerable ones' ordination. Through the Lord's psychic resolution, 500 fire sticks could not be chopped, parentheses, and parentheses, were chopped. Fires could not be kindled, parentheses, and parentheses, were kindled. Could not be extinguished, parentheses, and parentheses, were extinguished. 500 fire vessels were created. In this way, there came to be 3,500 marvels. Then the Lord, having stayed at Uruvela for as long as he found suiting, set out on tour for Gaya, head together with a large order. On tour for Gaya head, together with a large order of monks, with all those same 1,000 monks who had formerly been matted hair ascetics. Then the Lord stayed near Gaya, at Gaya head, together with the 1,000 monks. And there the Lord addressed the monks, saying, quote, "Monks, everything is burning." And what, monks, is everything that is burning? The eye, monks, is burning. Material shapes are burning. Consciousness through the eye is burning. Impingement on the eye is burning. In other words, the feeling which arises from impingement on the eye, but be it pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that too is burning. With what is it burning? I say it is burning with the fire of passion, with the fire of hatred, the fire of stupidity. It is burning because of birth, aging, dying, because of grief, sorrow, suffering, lamentation, and despair. The ear is burning. Sounds are burning. 3 dots. The nose is burning. Odors are burning. 3 dots. The tongue is burning. Tastes are burning. 3 dots. The body is burning. Mental states are burning. Consciousness through the mind is burning. Impingement on the mind is burning. In other words, the feeling which raises through impingement on the mind, be it pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that too is burning. With what is it burning? I say it is burning with the fire of passion, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of stupidity. It is burning because of birth, aging, dying, because of grief, sorrow, suffering, lamentation, and despair. Seeing this, monks, the instructed disciple of the Aryans disregards the eye, and he disregards material shapes, and he disregards consciousness through the eye, and he disregards impingement on the eye. In other words, the feeling which arises from impingement on the eye, be it pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that too he disregards. And he disregards the ear, and he disregards sounds, and he disregards the nose, and he disregards odors, and he disregards the tongue, and he disregards tastes, and he disregards the body, and he disregards tangible objects, and he disregards the mind, and he disregards mental states, and he disregards consciousness through the mind, and he disregards impingement on the mind. In other words, the feeling that arises from impingement on the mind, be it pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, that too he disregards. Disregarding, he is dispassionate. Through dispassion, he is freed. In freedom, the knowledge comes to be, quote in quotes, I am freed, and quote in quotes, and he comprehends. Destroyed is birth. Lived is the Brahma faring. Done is what was to be done. There is no more of being such and such. End quote. And while this discourse was being uttered, the minds of these 1,000 monks were freed from the cankers without grasping. Told is the disquisition on burning. Told is the third portion for repeating the wonders at Uruvela. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be